Good morning. Welcome to this webinar today. This is the 2016 Crisis Coach webinar series, the second in the series, presented by the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools. My name is Bill Baker, and I'm at Firestorm, and we're pleased to have you joining us today. Our presenter today is going to be Jim Satterfield, the President and Chief Operating Officer of Firestorm. You can also become our friend, and we'd like to have friends. Firestorm Solutions on Facebook, Firestorm Soul on Twitter. There is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind our presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. This work product should be read and considered in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. Firestorm is delighted to have a good relationship with our friends at the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools. Today we're talking, but it was such a little fish. You can watch previous webinars and register for future webinars by going to firestorm.com. Our host today for the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools is Rich Martin, the Executive Director. Over to you, Rich, please.
Thank you, Bill, and welcome everyone to the second Crisis Coach webinar of the year. The topic's a great one. Cybersecurity is a big issue, getting bigger all the time. The federal government's just been announcing how many billions of dollars they're going to spend to update their security systems, cybersecurity. It isn't just a government problem, as Jim will be talking to us later on. I do want to mention one thing. I'll mention it again at the end. One of our most well-registered, attended, or would-be attended workshops was the one on curriculum unit planning using the Understanding by Design model. That was canceled due to weather in January. It's been rescheduled for next Friday, February the 19th. I want to make sure that everyone who thought they couldn't go finds out that they can go. And it's a thing that we should be sending groups to, at least 2 or 3 from a school. So put that back onto the list as February 19th, and it'll be held here in Nashville and at Franklin Road Academy. So enough of that. I'll mention some other things coming up in the next month or so at the end. Back to you, Bill.
Well, I'll jump in. It's Jim. Rich, it's always good to talk to you, and I think that the benefits that the association get are quite large, and having that educational opportunity is one of the key elements as we work together. My name is Jim Satterfield. I'm the President, COO, and founder of Firestorm, and we're glad to talk with everyone today on this topic. And we'd much rather talk to you today than after the breach has occurred. So we're going to try to give you some insights onto that. And one of the things that we want to do, phishing sounds kind of cute when you use that name, but it's the means to a cyber breach. It's the door by which the criminals will walk into your school and take the information that you have concerns about. And we're going to talk about what that information looks like that you have and why you are a particular target here to be considered. So your risk of this increases every day, just as Rich pointed out. By the way, I find that Rich always points out things that are continuing to happen that we all need to be aware of to be protected. If a breach happens, your school is going to be impacted on multiple levels. The human level, the students, the families, the parents, the alumni, and your teachers. By the way, many times we don't think about the alumni that are in our database because then someone could get in, steal that information, and then send an email to where it appears as if it is coming from the school when in fact it's coming from a criminal. So this would help hinder you in a lot of your fundraising and your development programs that you're doing. Also, if suddenly word gets out, if you deal with this particular school, it's not safe, that's not a reputation that you want to get. So whether it's the human level, the operational level, the reputation, or even the financial level, stealing your money. Now, not all of us are rich like Rich is. By the way, Rich, it's helpful that you start out with a name that starts with the word rich. I think that proves how wealthy you truly are.
I agree.
Yeah, it'd be good. And if you could just get some of those billions that the federal government is getting away, you probably would be willing to stop for just $1 billion, I think,
Right.
as you look into these areas. But so we're going to talk about what you need to know about this and how you need to prepare so that the shark that you see in the image there is not going to be coming to take a bite out of your school. We're going to talk and explain what cyber breach really is. We're going to explain phishing in greater detail, tell you what you need to look for, give you some of the samples that are out there, the various types of phishing that goes on, what you need to do, and then some next steps. So that's the direction that we're going, and hopefully you'll get some good insights from it. Now, a rocket ship should have flown up onto your screen, and why did that rocket ship come in? And when we think about it, a word comes to mind, or a phrase called rocket scientist. And look at this quote that's coming up. I literally work with rocket scientists, and I can't get them to stop clicking on the wrong links. So what chance does your organization have? Now, that came out of the U.S. Army Missile Defense area. He spoke at a cyber conference, and he was sharing this. And this explains why it's so important that we do training in our schools, training for our teachers, for our administration staff, training for our students, and for the parents that are involved. Because these actions then create the door through which the criminals will walk into your school. Now, I know that we follow normal procedures in our schools with lockdown, lockout, shelter in place, and evacuate. We don't form an exercise that says, open the door and let in many people who are bad into our school. That's what phishing does. It opens that door, and we've got to train our people to be aware of it and not to fall into the trap. Now, you've got to run your school no matter what. You're in a business, your students are expecting to learn, the parents are expecting you to be in place, and we've seen a shift in assets from physical to virtual. Now, I know you own a building, and I know you own some property, and you've got furniture and other assets, but as you start to look at the virtual assets that you have, the information and how that would be used, we've seen this shift over. So everything that you would have done routinely to protect the physical aspects of your school, you need to do to protect the virtual aspects of your school. Now, the term cyber breach represents several different things, and we're going to try to break that apart. It's not our goal today to make everyone an IT expert in this area, but I think if you start to understand where it could come, that will help you better with your defense structure. We're talking about all your information assets, the hardware, that would be the laptops, the computers that you have, the servers there, the infrastructure that ties it together, the software that you use, all the data in electronic and in physical form, even those file cabinets with information. And by the way, the information is between the 2 ears of some of your people. Now, I know we sometimes think that some of our people don't have a lot between those 2 ears, but in fact they do. And getting them to share what their password and login information is in the sites is really one of the things that the criminals are focused on. We also think about when we communicate, what we store and what we transmit across. So we're concerned about our data when it's sitting on our site, when it's in transit from where we are to someone else, and when they have it. And this whole aspect of every point along the way the breach would occur. If you provide that access to someone and send them the information, even though the criminal breaks in and steals it, you're still liable. It doesn't matter that you did it or your supplier or however it got accessed. And we're concerned about any unauthorized security events, whether they're intended or unintended, that could lead to it, or human actions. This human element, what we're ultimately going to talk with you about is creating a human firewall that will help to keep the bad guys out and keep your students, your parents, your alumni, and your teachers safe. Now, we always talk about the fact that every crisis is a human crisis, and our emphasis here has been, when we use that sentence, normally we're thinking about the impacts. How does it affect our students? How does it impact their families and our staff? But in this situation, we're also thinking about it as that's the source of the problem. That crisis came as a result of an action that a student or a teacher or an administrator or a parent took, and that opened up the door to create the problem. Now, there's a term that sounds funny called picnic. Problem in chair, not in computer. Now, if you think about it, it's the person who sat there and clicked on something that they shouldn't have that created the problem. It's not the computer's fault. The computer worked exactly as it was supposed to. You got the information. You had an opportunity to carry forward. It can't protect us against what that person would do. And so a term that you can use is to refer to picnic. We got a picnic problem here. It's the person in the chair, not in the computer. That's where the problem lies. Now, fishing's always good. I particularly like it with the F instead of the PH. I love to go fishing. Sometimes the catching is not so good. But it's really here the catching that matters. Why do bad guys do this? And you'll see down at the bottom of the screen is because it works. And so they're focused not on the 100 people or the 1,000 people that don't click on it. They're focused only on that one that does that click. They're going to create the problem to open that door. Now, I want to keep emphasizing that phishing is criminal. And what they do is they use a lure, just like when you go fishing, which is a fake bait, and you're trying to get that fish to bite on that lure, then you can set the hook and you can reel them in. By the way, that's exactly how it works with fishing with the pH on it. They're throwing out an offer. They're counting on your trust or your greed to come into play, and that's how they lure you in and then set that hook. So they're looking for your information so they then can commit fraud. Now, the getting in and stealing it isn't the fraud that we're talking about. We're talking about getting the information and then using that information to create fraud, to take money out of a checking account or to otherwise steal information that they can sell to a third party. This works. That's why we're aware. Now, up on the top of the screen, you see something that looks like a cute little goldfish, and there's a circle right in the center of it. It's actually a 0. That's a link that you can click. You can go to the FTC website, the Federal Trade Commission website, and they have a section on phishing. It's a good resource information if you want to be training your teachers or your students or your staff on this subject. And that's actually a game that teaches about phishing within it. I would encourage you to use that resource. The price advantage is it's free since it's part of the government. I guess it's really not free. It's lots of taxes in those areas. Now, the attributes of a cyber breach are, first, it's a criminal act, but you're going to be held liable for it. I can think of nothing else that could occur where someone commits a crime and then you're liable before the crime that they did. So imagine somebody comes into the bank to steal the money. We know that the criminals are liable, not the bank, but suddenly now the bank becomes liable for that crime. You, if your school is entered via this phishing technique or any other cyber breach technique that comes in, and the information associated with your students, with your teachers, with your staff, with your parents, with your alumni, with their parents, and anyone else you have come into contact with, those are all valuable targets. And so even if your enrollment is small, let's say you have 300 or 400 students, the target pool is quite deep when you look at your staff, their families, the contacts that those could bring you into, the staff, the parents from the students, the alumni that you've had over the number of years. And so suddenly that pool isn't just the 300 students, it's thousands and thousands of people. And using your information, they'll be attacked. The other types of things you see listed there are almost the same as you would see in any type of a crisis or disaster. But the difference here again is this is a criminal act and you're going to be held liable. Now, when we think about phishing, it can come as an email message. It could come from a website or even a phone call. Now, most of the time, we don't talk about the phone call version of phishing a lot, but there have been scam artists for years and years and years, and that traditional method is done. And the reason this is done, again, it works. But you get an email that's sent with a link in it, and the purpose of that is to install malicious software onto your computer to steal the information off. Now, the information they're looking to steal off your computer, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, Jim. I don't have all of the personal identifiable information for all our students and all of our personal health information, but you have login rights. And so they're going to be looking on your computer to see what do you type in as a username, what do you type in as a password, to gain access into the system to get more information. You become the door to open up all of the information within your school and with everyone associated with it. They leverage social engineering. They try to hey, I need your help. I was trying to get in touch with this guy. Can you send me that information again? Click here to download. I want to share this story with you. There's been a report about things that are wrong at your school, and I wanted you to see it first before it went to the media. All of those things are tools to get you to click on it, and then when you click, the software is solved instantly, and then you become liable for everything that's associated with it. Now, I will tell you, we've all clicked on something since we've been on computers that we shouldn't have. That's kind of a normal act that we do. And if you've experienced, you know that that's happening everywhere else. Now, so it takes advantage of your trust. So you may not even be able to tell that it's not real and that you're visiting. And that's the key element. It's trust and dealing with you in a way that's not real and you don't get to recognize it. As a result, that criminal then has access to all the things that they want simply because you made one click that you didn't have to make. So our defense here is pretty weak. I know we just passed the Super Bowl and we saw a pretty good defense in Denver playing in that particular game. They could stop certain things from occurring. If you share this information directly with a criminal, it's going to be very difficult for your system to stop those areas. So we talk about sensitive information. What could that be? Things like any company would be looking for, resumes on your teachers, health information. By the way, health information is more valuable than personal information because the level of detail that goes into the health insurance area. And it's not just, again, your students. It's not just your employees, teachers, and staff. It's their families of your students. It's your alumni. It's everyone that you come in contact with. This is a deep pool. Think about the private email addresses and the unpublished phone numbers that you have. How would it be if suddenly your school's disciplinary actions that you've taken toward a student were made public knowledge? That's information that you do not want to get out. Now, when we go beyond that, there's commercial information that could be available, bank accounts, credit information, any other strategies that are associated with it, within it. What is it that within your school that makes it unique compared to other schools? Why would you want to maintain that and not have it become common knowledge by everyone that's involved? So every business and every school is different, but there's tremendous areas of information that the criminals are looking for. So what do you look for? Great, I understand it. It's bad. We don't want this to get out. I know I shouldn't click on things. What do you need to do? Well, that FTC site that I told you about, the Federal Trade Commission, has some information. It's a good place to go. You can click to play. That's that game that I described earlier that you can click on, and it's a way that you can use to teach your teachers, to teach your staff, and to teach your students about how to avoid the bait that's going on. Generally, a rule to keep in the back of your mind anytime when we're thinking about fraud. If the deal is too good to be true, it generally is. So what do you look for specifically? Now, it's more than that 8th grade paper, the book report that the student wrote, who's got spelling and poor grammar, and we see a lot of those, as I'm sure you do. But we're looking here in an email where the wrong word was used, the T-H-E-I-R instead of the T-H-E-R-E, there versus there. Now, this used to be much more obvious 5 to 10 years ago when we were seeing some of the cyber crime coming out of third world countries. It was particularly bad. There's still a lot of that out there, but now they've gotten people that have done well in English and gotten good grades in the class, and it looks a little more professional that they have been using. But again, if it doesn't look right, if that's not the right word, if it doesn't seem to be appropriate, likelihood that that is from someone other than who it pretends to be. Second, links in emails, particularly a link in any email from somebody that you don't know. That makes it suspicious. Don't click on the link. Click here. We've got a conference coming up. We've got free registration. You know, unless you know that that's coming from the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools or a trusted source, do not click on that link. Now, even if you think it's coming from a trusted source, it may not be. The idea of spoofing, and there's a slight difference in the email or the area, it may in fact not be the person that you're thinking of. And particularly if the request seems a little unusual for what they're offering, that's another indicator. So spelling and poor grammar and links, those are the initial things for you to think about. Now, as you move from that, any threats. Now, you could be saying, hey, if you don't close your, if you don't do this, we're going to have to close your account. It could be, hey, you're behind on your payments and we're going to take your car. It could be any particular area that would come through, and so a threat is an indicator of a cyber breach because they're trying to use this social engineering that we talked about. Hey, I don't want my credit ruined. I don't want to have this problem. I better handle that. And so that's a way that they can predict, they being the criminals, of how humans will behave in each of these areas. And then finally, spoofing popular websites. Instead of it really being the real Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Chase, they slightly change the wording, and you think you're going to that site when in fact it's not. And so when you look for that, they're taking you to scam sites, or you might even get a pop-up that occurs on an email with a link in it to go at that point in time. Those are the differences that we're thinking about. Now, examples, hey, you just won $100 a gift card from Walmart. Please click here. Walmart's a very nice company. They have wonderful people there. I'm not thinking they're giving away $100 to everybody. And if you haven't been in a Walmart for a month, tell me why they're giving you a gift card and how could you have won it. So that's an indicator. That's playing on trust, the trust of the name Walmart, and greed. Hey, I didn't do anything and I'm going to get money. That's a one. We suspect an unauthorized transaction on your account. To ensure that your account is not compromised, please click the link from your identity. In doing that, you're just verifying and passing the information directly over to the bad guy. That's what they wanted you to do. Once you've confirmed your identity, they'll nicely take your identity from you and use it to take your money, or use it to get into somewhere else that they can get a larger prize. During our regular verification of accounts, we couldn't verify your information. Please click here to update and verify your information. There's a perfect example of where you're giving it away. Our records indicate that your account was overcharged. You must call us within 2 days to receive a refund. Oh, I better hurry and give them a call. Now you're moving away from the digital version into a direct contact with a human being. So the number they gave you isn't the name of your bank or your other company. It's there, and they're stealing your information at that time. We could have spent the entire day just talking about hundreds of examples, but this was enough to try to set a tone to let you know what you should think about. You know, Spearfishing is a type of phishing. It's where it's directed at specific targeted individuals or companies. When the breach occurred at Target, they obtained that access from the heating and air conditioning vendor that supported Target. That vendor had access to go into the Target systems to find out what stores they needed to go work on to fix the heat or the air. And so once they were into their vendor, then that vendor's access into Target opened up the door. Once they were inside there, they were then able to get access to all the credit information and personal identification information that's there. So it could be directed toward a person or toward a company, and it could be a multi-step strategy. They could be targeting your school to be able to gain access into your alumni base. And I've said alumni several times here because I think most of the time our schools aren't thinking about all the information that you have on your alumni. Or using your school then to gain access into one of your suppliers. So that's an opportunity to be thinking in those directions. And this attack of targeting phishing, I get through to this person, and then that person's access will get me through to everyone else. That's the most significant and successful technique used today in this area of phishing. Clone phishing is where it looks like you're dealing with the real thing, and then suddenly you're not. You think you're on that site, but it's really an almost identical. They got the logo down, they got the address, they copied over all the other information, but it's not sending that information. And they send that information from a site that appears to be similar. It may look like it's bankofamerica.com, and it's really bankofamerica.co, C-O, or some other designation that you didn't see the fine print to look at those areas. And they could even take an email that was legitimate and send it out from the phony site saying, oh, by the way, here's an update on the email that Bob had sent out earlier. And so you think you're dealing in safe because you saw Bob's earlier email. Now this one, you're not associating it with that breach. The last are whaling. That's where you're going after senior executives and high-profile targets within your business or school. Now you're going to say, wait a minute, we're a school, we don't have any high-profile targets. What are you talking about? Why would we be suddenly targeted at that area? Well, it could well be that they want to get into the chairman of your board or someone sitting on your board of directors or to the families that are involved. Maybe they know that the head of school is attending a conference. They're attending one of the good sessions that are being run at TAIS. And so while that head of school is out, they send a note to a finance or accounting. By the way, I bumped into a person at the meeting. Could you go on and send them the money that we owe them? We'll get the paperwork straightened out when I get back to school. Once that's done, then they're in and have that access, and you've lost those areas. So it could come as a legal subpoena. It's coming in, we're trying to get in, and you better show this to your head of school. You better print it out right now. There's a complaint from a family. There's an executive issue. All of these scams are trying to look like they're traditional legal, governmental, or business authorities, but the content has been tailored to get to senior leadership, and that's the exposure. Now, we've been talking a lot about digital here, the cyber emails, the websites, the links, etc. But it could be phone calls too. Someone that's calling your school. Imagine you cannot share information about one child with someone else, but maybe they're calling and pretending to be the parent of a student and then using that as access to gain the other information. Gaining trust is the way they ask for your username or password so that they can then install software. They're pretending to be your computer support team or pretending to be a regulator, someone that's talking about the accreditation of the school, or someone that's talking about the upcoming basketball game to make sure that all the details have been worked out from a security standpoint. Now, how do we deal with this? We've talked about a lot of bad things. We've got a lot of great names now to understand what's going on. What can I do? Number one, use trusted software and set it to update automatically. Software vendors, when they have to push out an update, be it Microsoft or Apple or anyone else, will notify you that you need to download a patch on your computer because of this particular vulnerability. So they're telling you about it and asking you to put in the repair that they've identified. Once they make that announcement, the criminals get the same announcement. They know, oh, this is where the vulnerability is. They can go and take advantage of that directly, or they can go to China and go to a website on the dark web and download a program to take advantage of it, maybe pay $50 or $500, and suddenly they have the way to take advantage. So once that opening has been identified, until you put that patch in place, you're vulnerable, and the criminals know exactly where to go and what to do. Now, 70% of all breaches occur in that 5-day period. So one of the things that you can do is to set all of your software to update automatically. That's going to close the barn door here and not leave you vulnerable. You're not going to go home at night and leave the front door of the school unlocked. Well, what this is telling you is, wait a minute, the door's unlocked and it's standing open and you need to take care of it. That's what the patch does. You want that done sooner relative to later. Now, you also don't ever want to email personal or financial information. You don't want to email account information, how to do a wire transfer, an ACH transaction, credit cards, any of those elements. It's not secure. So the easiest thing is don't send personal or corporate financial information out via email. If you have to provide that, provide it only through that organization's website, and make sure you're dealing with them and not that clone, not that bad guy that's sitting out there trying to take advantage of it. Now, when you see on the URLs the phrase HTTPS, the S stands for security. And so you might be going to a site that doesn't have that. That's an indicator. Or maybe they cloned it to look like it had that when in fact it doesn't. By the way, if you're looking at a URL, if you'll take your cursor and place over whatever's written there, it will tell you what the real URL is that you're going to. And that's a great indicator of where a problem is and what you want to be looking at. So I do a lot of research before I start clicking on something that I'm not 100% secure that is who we say. You want to look at your credit card and bank statements on a regular basis, and this says as the reports or the bills come in, we at Firestorm actually check our credit card accounts and our bank accounts every single day, because it only takes one day of vulnerability to create that problem, and that's going to be the early indicator. And use extreme caution anytime you're opening or downloading files or emails, regardless of who sent them. They contain the viruses or the malware that's going to create the problem. The next thing I want you to do is train. Everybody needs to know what could go wrong and what they need to do, and if they've got a question, where they should go within your school to be able to deal with it. And we'll talk about predict, plan, perform in a few minutes, but clearly awareness training is going to be critical. Here's another government site, onguardonline.gov. There's some information there that you can use to create a training program within your school and provide that level of protection. And they're using a phrase, stop, think, and then opposed to just clicking like the sound that you just heard. So as you think through this process, here's a perfect opportunity to stop, think, and then click. We all know what the standard protocols are. Shelter in place, lockout, lockdown, and evacuate. Similarly, we have to think about the standard protocols associated to cyber risk. Now, the cyber indicators are something that you can train your folks on what to look out for, and that's a function of what your school has and what the nature is. The information that's on the screen was for another client in another situation, but you see how we divided it into information assets and technology, software, network, database, and access, brand and reputation, and user experience. There are many indicators that you might be experiencing a cyber breach. Slow computers are one of the easiest ones to see, or systems that used to normally work one way appear to work differently, or suddenly your passwords don't work, or your accounts are overdrawn. The more people that are aware of what to look for, then the sooner you will know. On average, the criminal is inside of your school for 240 days before you know he's there from a cyber perspective. Well, imagine if you had a criminal inside of your school physically and he'd been inside of the school for 240 days, you wouldn't be happy about it. But from a cyber standpoint, think about all of the information that someone could gain access to if they had 8 months to be able to figure out what they wanted to do. So it's not a matter that the breach occurs and immediately there's an attack. No, once they're in, they're looking to try to figure out what's the best way to monetize this event for my company. Now you need a cyber breach response plan or roadmap. What are you going to do if this occurs? The FBI tells us there are 2 types of organizations: those that know that they've been breached and those that have been breached and don't yet know it. So think about what you would do, and this is just like any of the other portions of Firestorm plans: pre-action, onset, impact assessment, response and recovery, and post-disaster. You'll see here actions that you need to take at every step along the way, and having a plan of what you're going to do if this happens in your school. Now, predict, plan, perform. We use that methodology to help build plans and get you where you need to be. You want to understand what the vulnerabilities and threats are, what are their impacts, how are you going to monitor, and what are the triggers that are involved in each of those areas. That will give you a chance to start to become involved to protect your people. We'll talk about training and to perform in a minute, but in this predict phase, you might want to do an information security assessment to take a look at what are my information assets, what am I concerned about, where do I see the vulnerabilities within our school, what do we need to have in place, and then your plan associated with it, and then the performing, training everyone, teachers, students, parents on what to be able to look for and what they need to do, having your testing associated with it, having your intelligence network to monitor what's being said about various things, and then responding. So what must you do? You got to have good processes and controls in place. Access should only be based upon need to know. Not everybody needs access to everything. You're not letting everyone in your school see the discipline records that are there. So limit that access only into the portion that they need to, and then monitor who has access. Maybe they had access last year. Do they still need the access this year? Train, train, train. That's going to have the biggest impact of anything that we do. And then identify all the software you're using and all the devices that are connected. The sites that have the highest virus on them already are gaming sites. And guess where your students go on a regular basis? And we have our systems open to allow our students access. And there you go. Now it begins to spread. Everyone agrees that all companies have been hacked and will continue to do so. That's why being prepared is more important, because you can't stop it. And we can do everything we can, but somebody's going to do exactly the wrong thing. What is your strategy? The training reduces that. You have a responsibility in your school to be able to demonstrate a reasonable degree of care. If you don't have that degree of reasonable care, you've increased your liability. So you should ask your people what they do your people know what not to do? Not clicking on those links, not going to those sites, not updating their passwords. We've got to make sure that they do all of those areas. Now, there's some opportunities. Coming up on Thursday, February the 18th, is an active shooter exercise. It's at 2 o'clock. That's a chance for you to go and experience what it's like to go through an active shooter event. It'll be a virtual tabletop. Have your crisis team or your emergency team around the table and experience it, and it's specifically designed for a school environment. We did one for businesses this week. We had 1,050 businesses who registered for that event. Rich already mentioned the event on the 19th, and he'll talk about that more in a moment. We also are coming to Nashville on March the 3rd to do a Crisis Coach workshop, and that's another opportunity. If you want to have an information security assessment done either virtually or physically, we can do that for you. You want to align your plans and create an intelligence network. You want to download the brief, you can go to our website, and it's listed here. You'll get an email today giving you a link there. You'll get a brief associated with the topic that we talked about today. So, Rich, we covered a lot of ground. What else do you want to update everyone on?
Well, thank you for reminding folks about the curriculum unit design workshop that's been rescheduled for February 19th, and that means not only folks that were originally registered can go if they don't have a conflict, but people who weren't registered have an opportunity to go, and it's a great workshop. Kim Marshall's the presenter. He's been outstanding for us in the past. We do have Crisis Coach coming up at Battleground Academy on the 3rd of March, and that will be excellent, a chance to bring your crisis plans and review them with the experts at Firestorm. Jim, you'll be there, I hope, and that's right. Also, March 1st, there's a Strategic Planning for Independent Schools workshop at Ensworth High School. Excellent opportunity. There, Stuart McAfee, head of Los Angeles School, and Memphis is going to be leading that. And one last thing, April 12th, for those of you in admissions, marketing, and communications, we're doing a mini conference, first we've ever done. It'll be at Curry Ingram Academy, and multiple speakers on those critical issues for our schools, admissions, marketing, and communications. So those are things to look for coming up from TAIS, and we hope to see many of you at these events. Back to you, Jim and Bill.
Hi, thanks. We appreciate it. If you want a copy of today's webinar, you can go to firestorm.com and access a recording of today's discussion. If you've got questions, you can send us an email at webinars@firestorm.com, or you can call us at 800-321-2219. Thank you for all you do to help our students, to help them be safe, to help them grow both academically as well as morally. I think that you play a wonderful role in a mission here. If you've got questions, we're here to support you. We look forward to seeing you at some of the events that were just listed. Talk with you all again next month on next month's Crisis Coach webinar. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Goodbye.